Y'all trying to learn how to drift? Let's go. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Now, before we jump straight into what this car is, I do want to give you guys a reminder that all of my merchandise for Downshift Racing is now live. So if you want to pick up any shirts, hoodies, or hats, head on over to downshiftracing.co and get yours today. So this is my 2004 Infiniti G35. It's pretty clapped, pretty dirty. We have the sunroof, so that's neat. The wheels look like hot garbage because they were plasti dipped, and obviously it's peeling off. This one doesn't look too terrible, but if we come over here, this guy looks pretty bad. The one on the rear looks even worse, but yeah, it's pretty clapped, as you can tell. We got front bumpers hanging off, but this is the Project Seat Time drift car. Now, I can hear you guys in the comments like, why did you just buy another car? You just finished the BRZ, you haven't even driven it yet. Well, I have driven the BRZ a little bit, still working on the paperwork for that, but I have 3 years and a whole lot of money into the BRZ. At some point, that most likely will see some track time, but for now, I just want to keep it as a nice, super cool street car that I can take to meets, take up in the mountains a little bit, enjoy it, show it off, showcase the work that I've done and the work that I've put in over the last effectively 3 years to get that car running. So when I went to Grid Life, I spent a lot of time sitting passenger in my buddy John's E46, and it gave me the itch to stop spectating and start participating.
Stop participating. Stop participating, star.
So I wanted to get a drift car. Now, I looked around at 350Zs. You might be saying, why didn't you just buy a 350Z? Well, to get a manual one, I don't know if you guys have been on Facebook Marketplace lately. Everybody wants 10 grand for their 2004 350Z with 200,000 miles on it, and it's already had a motor swap. So I don't know if I actually mentioned this on the channel, but I sold my motorcycle a couple weeks back. You guys may have at some point in the videos seen that I had a motorcycle sitting in the garage, but I haven't hardly touched that bike in as long as the BRZ has been dead. And then when I moved to Atlanta, I have no interest in taking a motorcycle down I-85. Just not my jam, not my speed. And so when I sold that bike, I sold it for $2,200. I've owned it for 10 years and I haven't really ridden it in the last 3. So it was just collecting dust in the garage, wasn't really getting used at all. So I sold it for $2,200, which is pretty good. Back in 2014, I bought it for $1,800. So that should tell you something about where the market's going these days. So then I sold the bike for $2,200. This car was listed for $3,000, which is already way lower for a manual G35. Yes, it probably needs an engine, but it was listed for $3,000, and I got him to come down and sell it to me for $2,200. So I sold the bike, and then I bought this car for the exact same amount that I just sold the bike for. And I wasn't using the bike anyway, and I probably wasn't going to use the bike for the foreseeable future. Maybe I'll get one down the road. So as far as I'm concerned, this car was free, right? I was looking on Facebook Marketplace at G35s, both the coupes and the sedans, and 350Zs, just trying to find a good deal. And then this guy popped up. So this is a 2004 G35, and obviously it's got some wear on it. It's got some damage on it. The driver's side really doesn't look too bad. It's got a few little, imperfections as a 2004 car would, but if this has any indication, this was a drift car previously. So if we come around and look at the passenger side, not only are the wheels on this side garbage, the body on this side is a little worse for wear. Obviously, it was drifted before, and I'm going to drift it some more, so this body damage does not bother me in the slightest. I don't need this thing to be pretty. This is my first drift car, and I'm gonna be doing a lot of learning in this car. So, obviously, we have a nice big tire mark, tire dent on the passenger door, as well as some baconed rear fenders. And obviously the plasti dip on the wheels back here looks terrible. We come around to the rear, you can see a guy probably scraped a couple barriers out at Lanier, and the rear end's actually not too bad. So that's the list of the cons. Now let's talk about the list of the pros. Actually, before we get into the list of the upsides, there is one really major downside, and that is that this thing is going to need a new engine. That's just kind of how it goes with DEs when they're not treated right. So it has a little bit of rod knock. It's not bad enough to the point where it won't drive, hence you saw me drive it into the video, but at idle, you can't really hear it. When you start it up, when you cold start it, you hear a couple of knocks real quick, and then it idles and you don't hear it anymore. Once you get up to like 3,000 RPM, you start to hear that knocking come back. So it's drivable. I wouldn't try to take it any long distance, that's for sure. But it's movable. I can get it in and around the storage unit facility where I currently have it sitting, because the BRZ is taking up 2/3 of the garage, and with all the other stuff me and my roommates have in there, we don't really have enough room to fit a second car at the moment. So we've got the wheels look like trash because they've been plasti dipped. Probably just end up getting a new set of wheels and maybe use these as spares. It's got some body damage, which for me is not really a problem because I'm probably gonna slap it into a couple of barriers anyway. So I'm gonna put more dents in it most likely, and it needs a new engine. Now, I've just done that engine swap on the BRZ, which is real complicated trying to fit an engine that was never intended to go in that car into it. This is just essentially a like for like replacement. So once I get a replacement engine for it, it really shouldn't be more than a couple of weekends to kind of get that knocked out. We can, if I have, you know, 1 or 2 buddies help me, we can probably pull the stock engine in a couple of hours. Just disconnect everything, drop the, you know, all the fluids, pull all the hoses, wires, you know, connector clips and everything off of there, disconnect the transmission, take off the engine mounts, and hoist it up out of there. So removing it really shouldn't be too bad, and I don't think putting it back in will be too bad either. So as long as I replace it with a DE, non-rev up, non-HR engine, should just be a pull and put type of an operation. Now let's get into the pros list. There are a couple things that this car has that you know, stood out to me as wanting to build a drift car, and that is that it is already on coilovers. Some no name, can't really figure out, there's no markings on them, probably eBay coilovers, but it's on coilovers. So for me, that's a start. I don't need, you know, KW suspension to drift for the first time. It has a welded diff already, and I can tell because just driving it around, this is the first car I've ever driven that has a welded diff, and yeah, you can tell it. The wheel hop in the back is for real. Coilovers, a welded diff, and one thing that the guy who was selling it didn't mention is that it already has the Brembo brake upgrade. So on the front we have the 4-piston Brembo upgrade, and if we come to the back, we have the back 2-piston Brembo upgrade. Now, I probably am not going to go with a hydro right off the jump and go dual caliper. Maybe down the road, but then again, this is just the seat time car for me to learn in, and I most likely will upgrade to a different platform later on. So I'm really trying to just put as minimal investment into this thing as possible. But so yeah, coilovers, welded diff, brake upgrade. You know, I'm gonna change the pads and everything, but that's a pretty good start as far as, you know, a first-time drift car. Now, the parking brake that is in there is rather weak right now, so I might have to look into pulling the hubs off, not the hubs, taking off the wheel, taking off the disc, and then replacing the actual shoes for the handbrake. I traded, more or less, an asset that I wasn't using for an asset that I will use. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a net zero. So any money that I put into this at this point is gravy, right? So obviously replacing the engine is gonna run me $800 to $1,000 to get a decent used DE. And then I'm gonna do, you know, all new fluids. I'm gonna replace some of the gaskets on the replacement engine, specifically the gallery gasket, which I believe is behind the timing cover. I've been talking to a bunch of my buddies who have had 350Zs and G35s in the past, and everybody says, replace the gallery gasket. That's like the #1 thing you gotta do. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna get new valve covers, the metal valve covers, not to replace the plastic ones, which are kind of crap, honestly. We're gonna do an oil cooler, and we're gonna do a power steering cooler. And I've already got some guys who are selling each of those. So $800 for the engine, new fluids, new gaskets. We're looking at $1,300 roughly. And then oil cooler, power steering cooler, I can probably get for about $300 in total for both of those items. So for $1,500-ish, we're gonna have a running and driving drift car that we can throw around on the track and hit some barriers with, because I've never drifted, so I've got a lot of learning to do. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty solid pickup if you ask me, especially for you know, the deal that I got it for. So anyway, yeah, that's the new drift car. We've got obviously more content coming on this, more content coming on the BRZ. Like I said in the last video, I've got some things I'm working on in the background. I'm trying to get some things rolling there for, you know, upgrades for the BRZ, seats, harnesses, big brake, digital dash, those being sort of the main ones. But we're about to be able to make some more content, and we're about to have a lot more fun. So definitely subscribe. Look forward to a ton of drift content because of the fact that Lanier has drift events every Friday night. Probably gonna, like, once this thing is up and running and drifting, we're probably gonna be making a decent amount of content for this thing, because I am so stoked to get drifting. I've been spectating for so long. I'm ready to start driving my own car. So I got a hell of a deal, and obviously it's rough on the outside, but the transmission is good. Replace an engine, couple of, you know, reliability upgrades, and we're gonna be sliding this thing pretty soon. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up down below. Subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date on everything. Head over to downshiftracing.co if you want to pick up some of the merch. And until next time, build your dreams.